prior council members had said during their election.
Telling constituents that they're going to get rid of me.
All three of them are you talking about? Tom Allen, Tommy Dunn.
Tom Allen, Cindy Wilson, Bob Walter.
What about Eddie Moore?
Absolutely.
And what, I think you already said Tommy Dunn. What do you remember?
I can't recall Tommy Dunn at this point in time. I think I looked at that for a minute. I know Eddie Moore, yes.
So let me make sure I got this in my head. This is leading up to the primaries, and I assume Bob Waldrop and Cindy Wilson had to run in the primaries as well.
Correct, yes.
And so all four of those folks, Tom Allen, Eddie Moore, Bob Waldrop, and Cindy Wilson, you're not sure about Tommy Dunn at the moment.
I believe he participated in meetings at that time too, so I'm going to throw him in that bunch too, but I believe he did, yeah.
Okay, and just to make sure, and I apologize right now in terms of trying to make sure I give you the right time frame that I'm talking about. And if meetings occur in the time frame I'm talking about, that's totally fine. But what I'm trying to get at is leading up to the primary election itself. So when we're just in the campaign mode, essentially, because we don't know who's going to win the primary. Was there anything substantively different that Tom Allen, Eddie Moore, Bob Waldrop, and Cindy Wilson were saying about terminating you if elected than had been previously said by other folks running for council in the past?
Much more. It was totally different, unlike any campaign I had ever experienced in my whole life.
And we were talking about basically campaign platform type statements where individuals who were elected in 2008, who won the primary, I guess, in 2008, had indicated they wanted to get rid of you or fire you. And what I wanted to know was, what was the substantive difference between what those folks were saying, people like Tom Allen, Eddie Moore, Bob Waldrop, and Cindy Wilson? What was the substantive difference between what they were saying and what people had said in the past about wanting to get rid of you as part of their election platform?
Well, in the past, the candidates that had run for office, I believe, were fairer in that they indicated that they may not support me, but they never indicated in the public that they wanted to change administrations. For example, Bob Waldrop sent a political campaign letter out and identified me as a target. That's an example.
I mean, unless I had misunderstood your earlier testimony, I thought you said that Bill McAbee, Michael Thompson, and Ron Wilson all had campaigned in the past on a platform that included to fire you.
Well, they talked about it, but they didn't actually get as deep into it as the other candidates did.
When you say get as deep into it, that's what I'm trying to drill down to.
Go on the radio, send out political campaign letters, attend public meetings or group gatherings, continuously rile people up over it.
So the substance, would you agree with me, the substance of the message was the same as between both groups? They wanted to fire you.
No, I will not. I will not. I've never, like I said earlier, I never experienced so much, I guess, heat. It was just a completely different environment.
And I mean, it sounds like part of the concern you had was really more on the quantitative side. These folks in 2008 were doing a lot more to spread their message of wanting to fire you.
Well, I'd never had a candidate in the past who worked for a council member that would actually send a political letter out to the electorate saying that, I'm the target. It's time to remove me.
As a principle, would you agree with me that there's nothing wrong with a candidate for county council running on a platform that specifically says, I believe we should change administrations?
I believe that they can say pretty much whatever they want to say. However, I believe that in the past, anyone any council member that had ever run that way, I felt at least would give me a chance to show them that I was doing a good job.
And what evidence did you have let me ask you, I'm going to try to break this down into time pieces. So leading up to the primary, other than statements to the public or platform statements or letters, political letters say, were there any other evidence you had that the folks running to be elected to county council were trying to fire you?
Radio interviews.
Okay. But any meetings that you know of leading up to the primary?
I was told that they were having meetings, but I haven't proof earlier that they were having those meetings. Other than Ms. Wilson would periodically have meetings at her house.
Okay, and again, I certainly want you to tell me everything you know, and so just if you know it for sure, let me know. If you think you might know, but I'm really again focused on, because I know at some point.
I can tell you that Cindy Wilson did have several meetings at her house and invited the candidates over to talk about or to make presentations to them, or to try to convince them, or to talk about issues that were coming up.
And this is before the primary?
Yes.
Do you know who attended them in terms of what candidates attended those meetings besides Cindy Wilson herself?
I believe they all did.
Is there anything that you can think of as a matter of principle that is wrong with a candidate for public office having a meeting, inviting members of the public and or other candidates to talk about changing administration?
They can, again, they have a right to have meetings. I don't believe they have a right to discuss or to conspire. At that time, I never even seen.
And we'll talk about the contract in a bit, but other than meetings that you think Cindy Wilson may have been having, are you certain she was having some meetings prior to the primary occurring?
Yeah, I believe Bob Walter was having meetings then.
Were they similar meetings like the ones you described Ms. Wilson having?
Yes.
Any other meetings that you can think of prior to the primary that gave you concern about your job?
I think that was enough. We've got 2 city council members having meetings. Walter's office is right across the street. You can look out the window and see Eddie Moore going and coming on his way.
And this is prior to the primary?
Yeah.
So at this point, the sitting county council did not include anyone who was running for the first time for council, like Eddie Moore, correct?
The city council, that's correct.
After the primary occurred, and that was in June of 08, is that fair? I don't know the particular date, but at some point after the primary occurred, it was clear that 3 council members had lost the primary, right?
Right.
And the 3 you mentioned, Eddie Moore, Tom Allen, and Tommy Dunn, had won their respective primaries, correct?
Right.
And given the way Anderson County works, that typically meant that since they won the Republican primaries, they were most likely going to win the general election come November. Is that fair?
I don't believe there's any opposition.
If that's true, then they certainly would win, although I suppose the writing candidate would be.
I don't think a writing candidate would have had the time to be on the ballot some of them could have, of course, with the way the election happened, but it's very difficult for a writing candidate to get on the ballot.
That's what I'm asking. 2008, is it possible at least that someone could have become a writing candidate for the November election?
Possible, but not probable.
Okay, again, not worried about probable. Strom Thurmond won his seat once upon a time as a writing candidate.
I believe the only one that won the league ever in the history of the country.
So clearly, though, by June 08, primary has now resolved, and it appears very likely, would you say, that the 3 we mentioned, Tommy Dunn, Tom Allen, and Eddie Moore, are going to be elected in the general election?
That is correct.
And if they are, they will take their seats January 1, 2009, correct?
Yes.
What happened after the primary election occurred that caused you concern about your job? So I'm going to a different block of time.
Those council members elect. I know of one incident where at the citizen contact me and tell me that he had engaged in a conversation with Tom Allen, and witnessed by, I believe, one of the other newly elected candidates, and he told me that Tom Allen told him how they had planned to get rid of me in January.
Who is this person, Keith?
His name was Brooks Brown.
Who is Brooks Brown?
He was a citizen. He was an activist, showed up at the council meeting.
You say he was someone who was favorably disposed towards your service as an administrator?
No.
What are you aware of that happened after the primary election that causes you concern, besides this meeting you were talking about that Brooks Brown mentioned to you? Anything else?
Newly elected council members were meeting with staff members, which I arranged at times. Sometimes I didn't. They would contact the county department heads directly and ask for meetings. They would have these meetings supposedly on fact-finding missions, and they would, in conversations with some of the employees, they would make comments about, need to make change in the administration.
Now, just help me out here. I mean, obviously, the county council goes through an election process every 2 years where the entire council has to run for re-election, right?
Right.
And there has to be times where newly elected members of council are they're going to come in the next season.
That's right.
Is it part of your job as a county administrator when a newly elected council person is going to come into power? Is it part of your job to help arrange for such fact-finding meetings as you're describing?
Yes.
I mean, so basically what you're trying to do is get these folks up to speed on how county works. Is that fair?
It's fair.
And so you don't have a problem necessarily, doesn't sound like, with the fact that newly elected council members want to meet with various county staff as long as you arrange the meeting.
As long as they went through the administrator.
So the meetings themselves, if you arrange them, that's not a problem, correct?
Yes, those meetings, the ones that I arranged.
Even those meetings are a problem, but not because of the meeting. No, okay. Those are okay?
Yes.
And so you would have a problem with meetings between newly elected council members and county staff if you were not involved in arranging them. Is that fair to say?
Under this form of government, yes.
And you also have a problem with the content of the meetings if you felt like it was inappropriate for newly elected council members to make comments to staff about a change in administration. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And why is that inappropriate in your view?
I think first of all, they should not have contacted the staff directly. That's interfering with my ability to be able to do my job. Elected or they're in office or soon be in office. They should have, and I encouraged them to, if they needed information, to contact me and I'll arrange the meetings. I do know that they were contacting other departments, going directly to them and asking for meetings, and then those department heads would tell me about it. And so I think someone actually just went in unexpectedly, unplanned.
And do you know how many such meetings occur that you are complaining about?
No.
Can you give an example of one that you're complaining about? Like, who is the staff person that you're talking about?
Transportation.
Who is that?
And probably Hope Hopkins would have been one.
What department is he in charge of?
Transportation.
Anyone else?
That was the one that comes to mind. That was I recall him directly.
So that was something that was not arranged by you.
That's right.
Do you know who met with Mr. Hopkins among the newly elected council members?
I believe at some point in time in the meeting it was arranged, all of them did. Prior to that, I believe Eddie Moore was one.
Can't think of any others at the moment.
Not yet. I'm thinking maybe Tom Allen went too at some point in time. I'm not sure. I don't know.
And just to make sure I've understood what you're telling me so far, you don't have a complaint, it sounds like, about any meetings between newly elected council members and county staff where you arrange the meetings. Is that fair?
Sure.
So the complaint you're having is where meetings were set up without your knowledge, or you did not help arrange, and newly elected council members and various county staff. And no one you can recall at the time that was such a meeting unarranged by you was with Mr. Holt Hopkins in transportation, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And then later, apparently, Mr. Hopkins, you must have had a conversation with him
Yeah.
about the substance of that meeting.
Right.
And the beef you have, if I'm trying to summarize, is that some kind of comment or comments were made to Mr. Hopkins about a change in administration by one or more of the newly
Yes.
elected council members. Any other matters that caused you concern after the primary had occurred with respect to the newly elected council members? And I mean, cause you concern about whether you might be terminated?
Yes, I believe the meeting in August that occurred with the city council, and the motion that Bob Warwick wrote, and the interaction that he was having with Eddie Moore.
At that meeting or elsewhere?
In his office, they were having the private meetings.
Okay. And I'm going to categorize these into buckets if I can, but I know we've already talked about what I would call unarranged staff meeting between newly elected council members and staff, and that, as far as you recall right now, that was a meeting with Holt Hopkins.
Yeah.
Correct? In addition to that, which was of concern to you, you have a meeting in August 2008, which was a regular county council meeting. Is that right?
No, it was a special. I didn't have a meeting.
It was a special council meeting.
Correct.
That occurred in August 2008.
That's right.
And at that meeting, as you recall, a motion was made by Mr. Waldron.
I wasn't there. I was asked not to attend the meeting.
So how do you know that something happened at that meeting that was of concern to you?
It's in the minute.
Okay. So you looked at the minutes at some later time and saw that, as you recall, some motion was made by Mr. Waldron to do what?
I believe it was announced on the TV news media. It was all over. People were calling me that attended the meeting.
Right. And I'm asking, what was it that they were calling you? What happened at the meeting that was of concern? A motion to do what?
To suspend me without cause in January, and to suspend a finance director, and to replace me with an interim administrator.
Okay. And I think we already talked about this. You don't recall whether or not that motion was passed.
I don't think it was passed.
Anything else that happened at that August 2008 special meeting of council that caused you concern about whether or not you might be terminated at some time?
I believe the content of the meeting appeared that Walbert and Wilson were trying to give us some kind of a witch hunt.
Based on your reading of the minutes, you mean?
Yes.
And the witch hunt, I assume you mean would be directed at you?
Yes.
Do you know anything further about what you think that witch hunt would look like?
They kept talking about trying to do some type of a forensic audit of some sort.
Okay. Do you think that occurred during part of that August 2008 special council meeting?
It occurred there, and that issue came up many times at many county council meetings, brought up by Cindy Wilson and by Walter.
You mean at regular county meetings too?
Yes.
One or more of those two folks, Cindy Wilson and Bob Water, might make comment, or I don't know if they ever made a motion, but they certainly might have made comments, sounds like, about what? About being forensic audit?
I believe, I don't recall exactly, I believe there were motions made too.
Okay. And the thing, what was of concern to you as the county administrator as to whether or not the county council might authorize a forensic audit? Why is that a problem?
Do you understand the definition of a forensic audit?
Yes, I think I do. Pretty extensive, I suspect.
It's more than just being extensive. You're accusing the administration of doing something wrong.
But that's why I'm asking, why is it of concern? If you've done nothing wrong, why would you be concerned about a forensic audit?
First of all, it would be very difficult to do a forensic audit to look at every single transaction. It would cost millions and millions of dollars to do that. And I believe that was determined by the existing county council. But it implied that after we had received, I know the whole time, the entire time I was there, extremely clean audit opinions with very few management issues, winning the Government Finance Officers Association award for the audit. it just kept implying that there was something wrong, like they were trying to put this cloud over the administration and the rest of the council.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Preston, that county council has every right to decide to conduct a forensic audit if they wish?
They have that right, providing there's due process through this. I mean, I believe they do.
So it wasn't the fact of someone talking about possibly doing a forensic audit, you would agree there's nothing wrong with that?
No.
You would not agree?
No, I wouldn't agree there's anything wrong with it, but combining that with the suspension of the administrator and the finance director, I think there is something wrong with that.
Well, you think it must go together, that if you're going to do a forensic audit, you must suspend the county administrator to do it?
No, I'm saying when you talk about that type of audit in the same meeting that you're going to, you make a motion to suspend the administrator and finance director, it is together.
Okay, so then, did you think there was something wrong with talking about suspending the county administrator in and of itself?
Absolutely.
Why?
It's a contract. You know, supposed to have due process. You know, they should at least give me the ability to have a hearing of some sort.
And that was happened at an August 2008 special meeting and or some other county council.
And the fact I was asked not to come to the meeting.
The August 2008.
Yes.
You were at other council meetings, though, were you not?
I was.
And some of those, apparently, there was some discussion of the same type of thing, a forensic audit and or the suspension of the county administrator in January 2009.
I never was at a regular county council meeting where the suspension of the administrator came up. Meeting I was asked not to attend.
Now, we've talked about two buckets so far. One is the unarranged staff meeting with Mr. Hopkins, this August 2008 special meeting with council. And you had indicated, I would call this a third bucket, but you said there were meetings that were going on in Bob Walter's office that were of concern to you with respect to your possible termination. Is that fair?
Yes.
Are there any other categories of activity that concerns you between the time of the primary and the time of November 2008 when your severance agreement was voted on that caused you concern about possible termination?
Well, the newly elected council started sending me directives on county stationery, directing me not to comply with my responsibilities as related to bond issues and construction contracts.
How many of those directives did you receive that you recall?
I remember, I think two, I believe. There were more than that.
And to your knowledge, did directives, so-called directives coming from newly elected council members